Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We are on session 6, and we are here with Samantha Sturgis. She's dispatch supervisor out of Fenton PD, out of Michigan, and her session is self-care during a pandemic. Thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Thank you, Ricardo, and welcome back, everybody. I hope everyone is enjoying this morning's session so far. I'm having a little technical difficulty on my end, so Ricardo's going to be helping me in the background. So if you wonder why I keep saying next, it's because he's going to be working on helping me with my slides here. So I apologize for that. To introduce myself a little more, I've been dispatching for about 15 years. Sorry about that. It's a little loud in here. 15 years I've been dispatching, and I started presenting for the first time on dispatcher health. I had been through several courses on the mental health of dispatchers and how that affects us, which is kind of a no-brainer. Then I started getting curious about the physical health, how our job takes a toll on us physically, not just mentally and emotionally. And then 2020 happened. So in the past, I've done some presentations on dispatcher yoga, dispatcher health and wellness. And when 2020 and everybody went into quarantine, the word self-care kept getting brought up in my world a lot. So I had a moment where I needed to fix my self-care during the lockdown, during the quarantine. And that's kind of brought me to this point where I think that the mental and physical and emotional health of a dispatcher is all kind of compounded with self-care. It's a circular, you can go round and round with these topics. They're all interwoven, if you will. So when it comes to self-care as dispatchers, that's important. And this year has been really hard myself and on a lot of dispatchers that I know. So I wanted to talk today about what self-care looks like for us normally and what we can do to make it better, both during normal times, quote unquote, normal times, and during a quote unquote pandemic or 2020. Next, Ricardo, self-care, let's talk about that. What is it? The definition, if you're to Google self-care, is any activity that we do deliberately to improve our mental, emotional, and physical health. So the definition alone tells us that it has to do with those categories we talked about. So it's not just your mental health from the calls you take and your emotional health, maybe stress of work and kids schooling at home and everything else. Physical, how we're eating, how we're feeling, we have a sedentary job. Anything that we deliberately do to make those things better is considered self-care. I think that self-care, there's a handful of words that turn people off. When it comes to yoga and meditation and self-care, we as dispatchers tend to be kind of a tough crowd, right? And we hear those words and sometimes we blow them off. Like they sound, I don't know, too mushy, too wimpy. I don't know what it is about those words that scares people away. So that's why I want to elaborate on what it actually is. There's probably some of you thinking, yeah, I don't do any self-care, but you do. You just don't realize or identify it as that. So that's why I want to talk about it. What does a pandemic have to do with it? The stats, if you watched Larry's presentation earlier from InDigital, the numbers have been up ever since March in terms of people with mental health issues or calling mental health helplines, abuse of prescription pills, and suicide calls. All of those things are up this year, which I think is a very telling sign that self-care is an issue during a pandemic. When we're in quarantine, when things shut down, things that we normally do, our whole world is thrown out of whack. People that are type A personality, that like their schedules, suddenly everything is uprooted and that throws them for a loop. Or maybe you're someone who the type of self-care you liked was going to the gym, for example, and now the gyms are closed. So that's what the pandemic has to do with it. And the other thing I liked, in addition to the mental health statistics for this year, I don't know if anyone's read any articles, and I apologize, I can't see the chat bar right now. So Leah and Ricardo, jump in if there's anything good there. But there was an article on zoos during 2020, during the quarantine, and how it affected the animals. And when I was working on this presentation, I found it really kind of profound, because we're animals too. And if you look at the behaviors, it's a lot easier for us to sit there and comment on behaviors of an animal in the zoo than it is society or other people. So some of the things that zookeepers were mentioning during quarantine were fish and octopus, the animals in the aquariums, actually enjoyed it. They calmed down. They weren't scared or hiding from tapping little fingers on the glass, and they seemed to come out more and enjoy sort of the peace and quiet of quarantine. But then you have other animals like the koalas, who are used to a lot of enrichment and hands-on play. They were not liking it. They were holding on to zookeepers' legs and not wanting to let them leave, kind of like a toddler, you know. What other animals? They said the horses have lost muscle mass because they're some of the ones that are privately lodged at facilities weren't being ridden on their normal schedule, or hadn't been ridden in a while, and they've already lost visible muscle tone. The more socially intelligent animals really struggled, and the zookeepers had to come up with alternative ways to keep them busy. Monkeys and chimpanzees and the gorillas, they're actually people watching animals. So one of their biggest things is they like to watch and observe the people coming to visit the zoo. So some of the zoos actually brought in artists and had them set up their canvas outside the monkey enclosure so the monkeys could watch. They just wanted to watch a human doing what humans do. So anyway, I don't mean to go off on a huge tangent about the animals, but I thought that it was interesting, if you watch the animal behavior, that the quarantine even affected them. If it's affecting animals, can you imagine how it has affected us as human beings and the more complex lives we live? So that brings me to the next slide, which, if you look more in depth about what self-care is, they break it down into 7 categories. So starting, it's kind of like a spiral, starting there in the middle with the yellowish, it's emotional. The first category is emotional. There's mental self-care, physical self-care, pleasure, sensory, social, and spiritual. So what I want to do today is break self-care down into these 7 different categories and simply talk about what they mean. It's not one size fits all. A lot of the categories, when you start looking at examples, there may be 3 things on that list that work for me, that don't work for you, and then another 5 things on there that work for neither you or I, but work for a third person, and vice versa. And there are also things that can be in multiple categories. So something that is a sensory type of self-care could easily fall under pleasure or physical or another one of the categories. It's not meant to be a black and white divider, simply a way to think of ideas on how to take care of ourselves. So first, we're going to start off with emotional, which is on the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, started on the wrong one. Mental. We're going to start on mental. These are things that challenge your mind, which is kind of self-explanatory in the title, mental. But it doesn't have to be sitting there looking at a Sudoku puzzle. That's not everyone's thing. It can be as simple as not feeling guilty for saying no. How many times do we get asked favors by friends or family that are too taxing on us, and we know it, but we become those yes people and we say yes to everything? We don't have to do that. So that's a mental thing, reminding yourself that it's okay to say no. Avoiding toxic people, easier said than done, especially if we're dealing with negativity in the workplace or anything like that. If you can avoid toxic people, that's going to increase, help your mental well-being by avoiding that toxicity. Any activity that engages your hands. So knitting, sewing, crocheting, anybody that finds those types of activities, those can fall under a mental category. Journaling. So if you're someone who likes to journal your thoughts, maybe writing your own thoughts on paper isn't what you want to do. Maybe you tried poetry, or you could write short stories or anything like that. And it doesn't have to be something that you share with the public or the world. It's just a way to get thoughts out of your head and onto paper. And that can free up space and make you feel lighter mentally. It can be as simple as changing your route to work. So if you have a 30-minute commute and you take the same way every single day, and you are in a time where you're feeling run down and everything is just, it's like Groundhog's Day. You're going to work and you hate it and you dread it and everything is miserable and the traffic's the same and you get stuck at the same lights, and switch it up. Go a different way. Maybe you got to use your dispatcher skills and look at a map or take a road you've never driven down before. When I had a longer commute years ago, I used to take one way to work, like the highway. But if I took the highway to work, then I would take the back roads home, or vice versa. If I took the back roads to work, I would take the highway home, just to break it up, just to mix up my day so it didn't feel so mundane. And sometimes I would do it, strictly around traffic hours. But games and puzzles, this was a big one for me during quarantine. So my family went from two parents with extremely busy kids. We used to have practice and sports and activities 5 to 6 days a week. We were always eating dinner on the fly. And when quarantine first hit, everything came to a screaming halt. And we were eating dinner 6 nights a week together at the dining room table, which was just unheard of. I would come home every day from work, and we had hours to fill in the afternoon that we never used to have. And we had to find ways to fight off boredom. We played new family board games. I went to the store and bought several puzzles. And I'll be honest with you, there was a few days early on in COVID that I sat at the dining room table doing a puzzle, enjoying a glass of wine by myself. And it was surprisingly relaxing. It was something I hadn't done in years, something I forgot that I even liked. And I think that when we get sidetracked with our normal busy lives, we forget these things. So during a pandemic, now's the time to remember things that we once enjoyed, or just unplugging. For a lot of us, the pandemic may be kind of hopefully nearing the end, but it's also a political year. Maybe you're someone that hearing the constant negativity on the news and the politicians arguing, and maybe it's time to unplug. Put the phone down. Don't check your social media. Take a break from it. Even if it's just a day, even if it's an afternoon, maybe you make it a whole weekend. That might improve your thought process. And then lastly, for the mental, it's just identifying your stressors. Knowing what causes you to get stressed is going to help you avoid it. It's kind of not to equate it to something worse, but people with alcohol or drug addiction, the first step in fixing it is knowing that you have a problem, or admitting you have a problem. The first step in taking care of yourself is knowing what your stressors are and what things can help you. So that's why we're talking about these today. So next we're going to talk about emotional. Sorry that I had those two out of order. Next. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So emotional is a little bit self-explanatory. Things that improve your mood. Again, not one size fits all. One of the things suggested when you start, you can Google a lot of this. Some of this I got from books I've read. Some of this I got by looking for more information online. One of the recommended things was to find 3 good friends, not just good friends, but honest friends, and ask them what they think about you. What's the something that they love about you? Let's not open up too many, books here, but ask them what's something they love about you. Because if they know you well, they're going to be able to point out something maybe you've forgotten about yourself. And that's a mood enhancer right there. And then in return, tell them 3 things you love about them. And that can fall under another category we're going to get to later under social as well. We'll talk about that again. Letting yourself cry or vent. Maybe it's just a matter of having someone you can talk to. Um, Maybe you're the type of person who, when your emotions get too pent up or you keep things inside, the only way to get past that is to let them out. I bet you if we were in person, I could get a show of hands of, especially the women, who have ever put on a chick flick and had themselves a good cry just because it needed to be done. I know I've done it, no apparent reason, but I felt better afterwards. Um, Exercising mindfulness. There are a lot of really awesome books and products out there for mindfulness if you're not really familiar with the concept and with what it means. There are even, for those of us, I know we have our dark humor and we think we're alone. I have actually seen some really cool books on Amazon that are mindfulness books, maybe with a little bit of swearing, a little bit of humor. And I think that that's a good introductory way to start if it's not your normal type of thing. If you don't read self-help books and you're not into that, there's some really neat books out there for you. If someone pays you a compliment, which I don't think a lot of us receive every day, especially at work, especially as a dispatcher. If someone pays you a compliment, write it down, make a list, add to it every time someone compliments you. You can revisit that list when you're feeling down or if you're feeling not good enough or any of those negative feelings. You can look back at that list and be reminded of the compliment someone has paid to you and be reminded of your potential. And this one really stood out for me. I've never done it, but I think I'm going to start. If your agency maybe has sort of an informal program, I know some agencies call it like a high five board or a high five program where it's not really a formal award, but just a way to shout out to your coworkers on a job well done. Save those, stick them in your notebook with your list of compliments so that you can, on a bad day, look back and be reminded of the positive. I think that's sort of a no-brainer. Giving unconditionally, that's another one that will help your emotional spirits, if you will. Maybe it's donating to a local charity. Maybe it's always, helping out someone in need of help. It could be helping an elderly person with their grocery bags, but never expecting anything in return. And truly, I think if you've never tried being an unconditional giver, it's a mindset. And I think it can do wonders for you because if you just don't expect anything in return, go out there and put good out in the world. I truly believe that that good will come back to you. It's full circle. And last but not least, for the emotional, and again, these are not end all lists. I'm just giving you guys some examples, a handful of things to draw from, and hoping that somebody out there can, find a tool in this that works for them. Last but not least for emotional is pets. And I do apologize if you hear the clickety clack of my dog walking around the living room. She is not happy with me because I'm not helping her emotionally right now. But some people have a relationship with their pets where talking to their pets may help them. I've known people who will come home and have full-blown conversations with an animal. They're aware that that animal is not going to talk back, that it's not a two-way conversation. But it kind of goes back to when I said venting earlier or being able to talk to someone. If you don't have a person around, you can talk to an animal and still get it off your chest. And maybe that's not what works for you, but it might work for some. So that's emotional. Next category is physical. And physical is sort of what started me on this journey. Like I said, we have a very sedentary job. We sit for many, many hours, too many hours a day. A lot of us stress eat. We don't get enough sleep. These are all things that physically affect us. It's not about the bad calls we take. And well, it could be if you're stress eating, but it's just our human bodies weren't made for this. They weren't made for sitting around all day lack of sleep, shift work, and poor nutrition. And those are things that I think we're all guilty of. Um, Ricardo, will you just click next a few more times? There's a few more images. So, excuse me. All of these things that you're seeing, there's two more, um, represent physical. These are just, pretties for you to look at. But physical doesn't mean go get a gym membership. I think the word physical makes people think of that, turns them off to that. Some people are like, oh, you run, you train for a 5K. I will never be a runner. You don't have to be, but you could go for a walk every day. You could, if you have a dog, take your dog for a walk every day. Not only is that getting you physical steps in, but it can be an emotional mood lifter being out of the house with your pet. And it can also, vitamin D. You're getting vitamin D, you're outside in the sun, which is good for us. It can be trying something new. So maybe yoga is not for you. Hi, Lexi. Sorry, guys. Maybe yoga is not for you, but maybe you try a martial arts class or a local dance class at a community center or stand-up paddleboarding in the summer. Maybe you try hiking in a wooded area, something that you've never done before. This is something that there's endless activities out there that you may think you don't have any hobbies or physical hobbies, but try something new. Especially during quarantine, I had more time on my hands. Yes, things were closed down, so I couldn't go try a rock climbing place that wasn't open, but I took my kids to nature trails we hadn't been on in 2 years. We went for walks frequently during the early days because we were, again, looking for boredom busters, and it reminded me how much fun those activities were when I had time for them forever ago. And I've made a conscious effort as we've shifted back into somewhat normal routine to try to keep those things going. Yes, my kids may be back in sports, but I am trying to still incorporate those walks I was taking with my daughter where we would talk. That was a big one for me with kids. I would go for evening walks to get my steps in, but my 10-year-old daughter would say, Mom, can I come with you? Absolutely. And we would go for maybe a 2-mile walk, but the entire time we talked. She told me how her day was, what her interests were. I pretty much walked silently while she talked to me the entire time, but that was conversation I wasn't getting before. So again, that was helpful in multiple ways. More physical things, breathing exercises. This is particularly good for people who have a little bit of insomnia or trouble falling asleep. If you Google breathing exercises, there are several out there, some stemming from the yoga world, some not so much, but lots of breathing exercises that can help calm you down, that can help you fall asleep, or just if you need to pause in the middle of a day. There are counting breathing exercises where you inhale for so many seconds, then you hold for so many seconds, and then you exhale for so many seconds, and then you repeat. There's actually one that, like I said, does boast that it helps you fall asleep. I recommend it when I taught kids yoga classes. I recommended it to preteens before test taking. Before they would take a big test, I'd recommend some breathing exercises for them just to calm down, or the alternate nostril breathing. I mentioned this during the last conference as well. That's a good way to, it focuses both sides of the brain for those that are familiar with left side, right side. So really good before test taking in teens. You'll see the picture of water and nutrition. Again, guilty here. We stress eat as dispatchers, I think, because it's a stressful job. And sometimes we eat on the fly. We eat for convenience because either we can't leave our desk or we're working, we got stuck on mandatory overtime. And so now I'm eating out with the rest of the shift because I didn't pack food for, an extended shift. Or I get home and this kid has dance and this kid has baseball and we're just going to hit a drive-through in between. It's just adding to it, especially with that sedentary lifestyle we have. We're at risk for more cancers, diabetes, higher cholesterol, high blood pressure. And these are all things that proper nutrition can really help with. So I think our line of work particularly needs to be reminded and try. We have to strive for good nutrition, drinking enough water, ditching the caffeine and energy drinks. Easier said than done, but all of these contribute to physical self-care, physical well-being, and last but not least, so does sleep. There was a lot of pictures online of people sleeping, but the little kitty that you see was way cuter to look at than a bunch of sleeping strangers. So getting enough sleep is really important. And during a quarantine, we do have more time on our hands. I found myself going to bed earlier, actually waking up. These are the bright sides of quarantine for me. Yes, there were negatives, there still are. However, I've tried all year to remember the bright side. The bright side is early quarantine days, I was getting more sleep. I was eating better, home cooked meals 6 days a week as opposed to two like normal. Um, Drinking more water, all those things, and they physically do make you feel better, make you think clearer, and yeah, that's self-explanatory. So that's the physical. Those are just some ideas. Don't forget, just try something new. Get out there, do something outside of your comfort zone. Um, Next up is pleasure. Probably one of the hardest ones. A few more clicks. Probably one of the hardest ones during quarantine. Pleasure are the things we do for fun. This is the fun category. Again, not one size fits all. Some of the people that naturally gravitate towards the pleasure category of self-care, I think these are the ones that struggle the most earlier in 2020 when everything shut down. Your gyms, your spas, your salons. I know every woman out there is nodding their head right now at the fact that they probably just got their roots touched up in the last month or so, depending on where you live. I realize now I'm talking about this from Michigan when some of the other states may not still be as locked down as we are here. Movie theaters still have yet to reopen. They're supposed to open later this week. Gyms just recently reopened. Sports are hit and miss. So we're still not back to normal here. So maybe you're someone who your self-care or your taking care of me was going and getting a pedicure every so many weeks or getting your hair done, going to the spa for a massage. Those things all shut down immediately. Or maybe you're a retail therapy person. Maybe shopping is your go-to thing. So when everything kind of locked down in the beginning and you were stressed, you felt like you had no outlet. Now, that doesn't mean that none of these other things we've talked about wouldn't have worked for you. It's just that this was your normal category. Your go-to category was the pleasure. It's the comfort foods. It's baking a cake, eating a cake, having your cake and eating it too, if you will. Vacations. A lot of people's spring breaks were ruined earlier this year. Those are all things that, for some people, that was truly their self-care. I know it sounds very first world problem-ish to be upset about a vacation, but if you're someone who saved for 2 years to go on your dream vacation and then quarantine happened 2 weeks before you were supposed to go and your vacation's non-refundable, I mean, tell me that is not going to affect your mental health, your emotional well-being, how you're feeling about things. So these are all no-brainers, the pleasure category. You have to get creative, but you can try to do them at home. If you're a spa treatment person, you probably had to settle for some bubble baths and candles at home or begging somebody in your house for a massage. No, it's not the same as going to the salon and paying a professional to do it for you. You're looking at boxed hair dye right here. Hopefully I'm still in the tiny squares, but we do what we got to do to get by. Another one listed under pleasure that I found really hilarious, but it's true. It's not a need or a necessity. It's a pleasure item. Throw away all your old socks and underwear and go buy all new. When's the last time any of us did that? Just go through the drawer, every sock that has holes, all the underwear, throw them away and go buy yourself all new. It sounds like the dumbest little thing, but I guarantee there's at least a handful of people out here that are like, you know what, that's a good idea. When's the last time I bought myself new socks or new underwear? Um, or go buy flowers just because. Go buy flowers at the grocery store, check out, bring them home, brighten up the house, gives you something to look at, gives you something happy. Those are all things that they consider pleasure for self-care. So that brings us to the next category is sensory. Sorry, Alex. So we're all familiar with the five senses. We've got sight, sound, smell, taste, and feel. Sensory self-care involves removing or focusing on one or more of the senses. So here's where, if you're someone who suffers from migraines, you're very familiar with what I'm talking about, because number one thing you hear from migraine sufferers is that light bothers them. When they're having a migraine, first thing a lot of us, myself included, do is find a dark room. If it's not dark enough, the pillow goes over my face. I want it dark. The light is too much. Now, some people are susceptible to sensory overload normally, migraines aside. Maybe you don't like crowded places or loud noise, and you think nothing of it outside of avoiding those things, but you can better tune it. So if you don't like loud noise, yeah, you might typically avoid concerts or large crowded spaces, but have you tried sitting in a quiet room? Maybe you turn the lights off and the only sound is a positive sound. Maybe you have one of those nature sound apps or CDs, if people still use CDs, or I have an alarm clock that makes the nature sounds like rain falling, birds chirping. But if you sit in a dark, quiet room and only listen to something positive or relaxing for you, that can sort of reset your mood for the day. And that's going to help for the migraine sufferers too, who don't want the light, sitting in a dark room with just a candle lit. So you're diminishing the other senses by turning the lights off, but you're heightening or finer tuning the ones that you are using, listening to the sounds or the soft candlelight. It can be grounding exercises. If you've never heard of those, that's sort of drawn from the yoga world as well. Grounding exercises. The easiest one to do is to lay on the ground. Quiet, again, preferably dark space. And it's really a matter of being in touch with your physical body and feeling where each part of your body is touching the floor, sort of checking in with body parts that you don't think about or use during the day. I don't know about you guys, but when's the last time you laid on the floor, thought of nothing but your breathing, and then felt, the tip of each finger touching the floor, or felt where your calf is touching the floor, or your heel, or, your upper arm. Just really, grounding exercises sound kind of hokey, like I said in the beginning, how some people get turned off on certain words or categories, but give it a try. I encourage you to try the grounding exercises. If you can't do it on your own, look for a guided grounding exercise where someone walks you through it, telling you how to do it. It's actually very relaxing. Essential oils, it's 2020. I know essential oils are still huge in a lot of places, but that can be another, that's utilizing one of your senses, the sense of smell. Some people swear by the mood enhancing oils. Others swear by peppermint or eucalyptus helping with illness or headaches, things like that. Christmas lights are another good one for light. So if you're looking for that calmer setting, you can turn off all the lights. And if a candle's not your thing, maybe you have a small corner of your room with some Christmas lights. Just having the darkness, minimal light can be mood enhancing if that's something that suits you. And then last but not least, cloud watching. When's the last time anybody went outside and looked at the clouds? Maybe you have an area in your backyard where you won't be disturbed, or find a quiet corner of a park. I've even done it on the high school football field, not during the school year when it's in use by thousands of people, but when I was out there walking the track on a particularly blue sky day. When's the last time you laid down and looked at the clouds and genuinely just laid there and observed them? Definitely can take your mind off things. Kind of got that childlike reverie going on. Highly recommend that as well, especially before the skies get gray around here and filled with rain every day. Not sure where everybody's from, but if you've got blue skies and clouds to look at year round, lucky you. No, go ahead, you're good. Next category is social. I just put this giant image on here because when I hear the word social, I instantly think of these things. That's what comes to mind as social media. So when I'm talking about self-care, I'm not talking about social media. In fact, I would say that's the opposite. Self-care in terms of social is positive only. So you can see why I have X'd out no social media. This is where we ask for help when we need it. We're a pretty stubborn bunch as dispatchers, and we're also a pretty stubborn bunch as moms. I know I am. I don't ask for help when I need it. I just get mad that no one is aware that I need it. How dare you not realize I need your help and give it to me without me asking, right? I would normally say raise your hand if you're with me, but asking for help, conversing politely. When's the last time you stood in a long line, like maybe the post office or the grocery store, and instead of being just annoyed and maybe preoccupied with your phone, standing in line, when's the last time you just chatted with the person next to you? Again, this isn't for everybody, but maybe there's a lonely person, a lonely old lady in line behind you at the post office, and instead of huffing and puffing my way through the line and looking at my phone, I could strike up a little friendly conversation for 2 to 3 minutes of my day. And maybe that would help her as well with her emotional well-being. Pick up the phone, call and say hi. In a world of texting, a lot of us probably don't have as many phone conversations as we once did. So picking up the phone, and this one I've learned, my mom recently in the last year moved cross country. She used to live 2 blocks away from me. So it's been a learning experience. I have to remind myself to pick up the phone and call my mother. That sounds really bad, but I'm not a phone talker. I get home from work. I've been on the phone answering calls all day. I don't want to talk on the phone. And my mom's talkative. I know it's going to be a half-hour ordeal, but I have to remind myself to do it. And I never regret calling and talking to my mom afterwards. So pick up the phone and call someone, maybe a friend or family member that lives far away that you haven't talked to in a long time. See if they've got time for a conversation. And I will tell you, that one helped me early in quarantine, not just because of the typical reasons. When the Black Lives Matter anti-police tirade was all fresh earlier in the year, there was a lot of hate on social media among even people that I count as friends. I was struggling to process a lot of it emotionally, but I didn't feel that I could have conversations, deep, well-meaning conversations online about it. So there was actually 2 points during that time period where I talked to friends or family members on the phone, a phone conversation that we normally wouldn't have. And we talked very in depth on those topics, hot topics, but we had meaningful conversation and conversation we couldn't have had as keyboard warriors or on a social media platform. And that was huge for me. It was important for me to be able to get some of my feelings on the matter off my chest. And I couldn't do it online. I couldn't do it in that permanent format where it could be misconstrued or read wrong. But I was able to call up a trusted person and have meaningful conversation with them. And that was huge for me. So that's an example of social self-care. Venting and complimenting, which we talked about earlier. I prefer to stick with the complimenting over the venting. although it's necessary evil sometimes. And last but not least, support groups, which these can be found on social media, but the importance of these support groups is that they're positive. If you're doing something for your social well-being or your social self-care, it needs to be positive. A great example of this, and I don't know, you guys, I'm in a small square, I'll show you at the end, but I am supporting my 911 Wonder Women from earlier, Sarah and Halcyon, and that group is the one I want to use as an example. I'm in several 911 groups on Facebook and social media, but the 911 Wonder Women group is by far the most positive group I've ever been in. I've never seen anything in that group that isn't uplifting, helpful, positive, friendly, supportive. You get on some of these groups and there's going to be a few negative people stirring the pot, and there's going to be posts that kind of bring everybody down or bickering. That's not the kind of social media that's going to help you or take care of you. If you're going to go to social media for the social aspect of your self-care, it needs to be positive. And another positive example of that is coming up on the next slide. So we'll move on to that. Last of the 7 categories is spiritual. Spiritual does not have to mean church. So not trying to scare away any non-church goers, but also not trying to diminish that role for any people that are religious or do attend church. If maybe you are religious and you don't go to church, but that doesn't mean that you can't still take care of that part of you. You can join a Bible study. You can do that on social media. I have a dispatcher she leads women's groups and book clubs in a spiritual way. So a lot of ladies from her church, and that is extremely crucial and helpful to her emotional well-being. And maybe you do have a Facebook group from your church, or you do a women's or men's retreat, which a lot of churches do. Those things can be, super calming, invigorating, motivating, whatever word you want to use to describe it. They're out there. If maybe you've been away from church for a while, you want to find a new one. Maybe you're not a church person, you're more of a spiritual person. Maybe you find, a yoga studio that really makes you feel in tune, in touch with the world around you and yourself. That constitutes spiritual as well. So don't get hung up on the word and think that it's, non-secular only, and lots of different ways that you can fine tune that as well. So we've covered all 7 of the categories. I have hardly touched the tip of the iceberg on things that we can do to take care of ourselves. I hope that today I've given, if 5 of you walk away from this with a new idea on a way to go out and take care of yourself, then that makes me extremely happy. The last slide that you'll see here, I just want to wrap up with 2 quotes that I think sum it up really, really well. The first is, if you don't make time for your wellness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. That, for me, covers 2 categories, mental and physical, that we talked about. Your mental health, if you don't make time for that, that can cause big problems. We've seen it, unfortunately. Reach out to any of your friends that may be having struggles in that regard. The last thing we like seeing is a spike in suicide rates, especially in first responders. It's heartbreaking. Physically, it's a no-brainer. If we sit on our butts and don't take care of our bodies, God only gave us one, and if you don't take care of it now, you will be paying. It's either pay for the healthy food and fitness now or pay for the medical bills later. You only get one. It's like my great grandma used to tell us, she only had one set of teeth and she was not going to have dentures. And that woman flossed more than anybody I've ever known in my life. But at 97 years old, when she died, she still had all her normal teeth. So grandma was right. And last but not least, you're totally replaceable at work. You're not replaceable at home. Home is your real life. Keep that perspective always. That one's hung up in my locker at work because, sometimes I feel like I cannot escape that place for the life of me, whether it's phone calls 24 hours a day on my work phone, or getting called in for sick calls. I have to remind myself regularly that that place does not own or rule me, and that someday they will do just fine without me. Uh, Hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it's true. So I think those two things sum it up. You guys, we got to take care of us, and it has been extra hard this year with a pandemic going on. I really am anxious to hear if anyone has anything to say. So I'm going to let Ricardo or Leah let me know if there's any questions I can answer. I'm going to try to hop in here and see if I can see them.
All right. So there is a question that had come in, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll go ahead and read this to you. It popped up into the comments, but it says, "How do you discuss health with the junk food eater know-it-all? I'm certified in nutrition coach and life coach even, but we have one that is very concerning."
um, I think from past experience myself that you can't sometimes. That's like trying to tell a smoker why they should quit. They know. Every smoker out there knows it's not good for them, but they have to want it. So I think from personal experience that you're almost better off leading by example. Instead of trying to lecture them into making healthy choices, we lead by example and by taking care of ourselves and eating healthier in front of them. And maybe you could even go as far as offering um, a really great snack. And when they say, "Oh, this is great, can I have the recipe?" That's when you're like, "Well, it's actually, got a substitute for sugar, so it's not that bad for you." Introducing them by sharing treats or by setting a good example, I think is going to get you further than. And then I'm no nutrition coach, you are, but I had a coworker years ago that used to tell me how she loved Burger King's chicken fries. They were good protein. And that was that was frustrating to hear her constantly refer about her getting her protein from Burger King. But there's no, you can't force it. I think that's the best way to get through to those people. It really is. Or on the flip side, encouraging a workplace challenge. Maybe your work wants to have, okay, we're going to see who can lose the most weight this month, or we're going to all do a, no pop for a month. Maybe you have some sort of competition, a friendly competition at work. That could help as well. We did a no pop thing, and I've got a detective that is, it was supposed to be just like a who can do it for 1 month or Lent or something. And I have a detective who has not had pop in 5 years. So,
Dang. Yeah.
yeah, right?
Leah put in their pop, not soda.
I know. I'm sorry.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
that's the Michigan in me. But
I'm
yeah,
the same way. I'm born and raised in Michigan, so I know exactly what you mean with the with the pop and soda. But in some places, a pop or a soda is just a Coke. Everything is a Coke.
yep, a Coke, and then it's like, what kind of Coke? Oh, a Sprite. I'm like, wait, what?
Yes. I definitely like
um,
that idea though, to make it a competition, because a lot of a lot of people like to compete with stuff and have those bragging rights. So that is
yeah.
definitely a way as well, to put it out there, is to do it as a competition. I like that.
One of my officers recently made a Facebook page too, just for her friends and whatnot. Invited a bunch of coworkers, and it was like 100 days of any activity. Just the goal is every day for the next 100 days to make sure you get 10 minutes of physical activity and check in and keep everybody honest. And several coworkers joined that, so trying to motivate them that way, almost like a peer pressure in reverse. That might work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And looking in the comments, there's a lot of people in here who were saying, a lot of different things that they started doing as well, that they hadn't done before. And I don't remember who it was. Someone had posted in here that that her and her husband, actually, they hadn't been biking in forever. They bought bikes, and now they're doing, I don't know, like 14 to 16 miles and stuff. So that's pretty awesome right there. Um,
Yep.
there was a lot of stuff that I think I actually started working a lot more during during this time, but I
Yep.
also learned the hard way, because I wasn't taking care of myself, and I said this in another session too. already that my body was just like, "Hey, stupid, we're gonna fall apart on you now so that you can learn a lesson."
Yep.
Uh, it was not good.
I hear ya. And I know a lot of people that actually not well, none of them are dispatchers, but I do
Mhm,
know some people that when they were working from home actually got uh, healthier because they weren't eating out, going out to lunch, ordering fast food at work, and they were like doing their Zoom meetings and phone calls while on their stationary bike or their treadmill or um, yeah. So there's you have to look at the bright side, I think.
mhm,
And I what brought this topic around for me is I did a Friday live day with the 911 Wonder Women group,
mhm.
and I talked for just about 15-20 minutes about self-care months ago, and it was when I was having a breakdown. I got on there and was like, "Hey, I've cried 5 times this week. I don't know why." And that's kind of what led to this today. So
Nice.
I just hope that everyone's, checking in on others and taking care of themselves. And even though things aren't normal, maybe we can all find something good to take to our new normal. And yeah, I hope that this just gave some ideas to people. And if there's anyone out there that was, afraid of the self care term, hopefully we got rid of that too.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah,
thank you very, very much for joining us, for doing this session, and we got it figured out. You know what's funny is that
I know.
that that last slide, or the one slide where I had gone forward before you said to, I
Yeah.
sent a message to Leah and I said, "What are the odds?" I think it was the sensory one. I said, "What are the odds that there are more little pictures on this slide?" And she's like, "There's probably a couple." So I hit it and it went to the next slide and you're like, "No, no, no, go
Oh,
ahead."
that
And
was the only one that had one. I should have warned you. Yeah, you
and
guys, I had technical difficulties today, so I actually had to email Ricardo my presentation right before we came on, and the tech whiz kid that he is made it work, and I was able to log on to you guys with my cell phone and still made it work, which kudos to you for putting on an awesome conference and being able to fly by the seat of your pants. So
thank you. Yeah, and
yeah,
also to my homegirl Leah in the background who's
yes,
listening to audio and everything that's going on. At that moment, she's like, "Nope," in all caps, and I was like, "Nope." I said, "Yep, there's no other pictures on there."
yeah, no, I'm so
Uh,
thankful for you guys. You guys make this a breeze. You and Leah both. Love you both, and so glad to be a part of round two. And I cannot wait to hear Tracy's presentation later.
Heck yeah.
So,
Again, thank you so much for being on, and everyone who is attending. We're going to switch to the next session. I'll bring you all with me, and we will get started here in about 15 or so minutes.
all
Thank you
right,
very much.
sounds good. Thank
Have a good
you.
one.
Bye.